guys, welcome back. This is Of Stone and Clay. Today we are on episode 91. We have an awesome guest today. He is a friend of a friend. I met him a few months ago briefly, but we got in contact. His name is James Dallin. He is a motivational speaker. He's spoken at, I think, over 75 schools talking about substance abuse and substance abuse prevention, just general motivational speaking. And James, thanks so much for joining us, man.
I appreciate it. I appreciate being here
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
invite
Yeah,
to talk about this stuff.
I'm excited. I know a little bit about your story, but I want to ask an interesting question that I was thinking about for myself the other day, and I wonder what your thoughts on it. The question is, how much do you think you really know about yourself?
That's a great question. Because I'm always finding out different things about myself as I go through and progress through this life. That's a great question. I would say 75%.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot there that I don't know, and I think there's a couple reasons for that. I kind of took a decade off, and we'll talk about that. But I think that I know myself pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I know, on the other hand, there's a lot of things that I've learned about myself, and so in the last couple of years, but I don't think that I've reached my the full knowledge of what I'm capable of and what I know.
Yeah. I think it's a mistake to assume you know yourself perfectly,
right?
And to assume that you know what you'll do in any given situation or how you'll feel if something happens. I think it's just important to stay open-minded and to have that humility that, hey, like, I think I know this and this and this, but like I might not.
Yeah.
That's
a great question. I think you're right. I think that you got to leave room there to be vulnerable and to be humble, like you mentioned. And when those things happen, you learn a lot.
Yeah.
Especially in those humble times.
Yeah. Okay, so let's rewind a little bit. You said you took a decade off, which I think is a funny way of saying it. But at what point because obviously you're talking about addiction and substance abuse prevention and stuff. So when did addiction and drugs sort of enter your life? I know it happened a little bit later in life.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, and a lot of people are surprised when I talk about this. Is I didn't have any substances until I was 34.
Wow.
I hadn't even hardly
not a dirty cig, not glass
marijuana,
of wine.
No.
Yeah.
I hadn't even really smelt alcohol. If you were to ask me at the age of 34 what drinks have alcohol in them, I would have said something generic like Budweiser because I saw the commercial.
Yeah.
If you were to ask me about hard liquor, I would say, vodka or Jack Daniels or something like that because I saw it on a movie.
Right. But you had no idea about anything.
I had no clue about anything. Drugs, to me, at the age of 34, were for people that were lower than me.
Mm-hmm.
I could never do that.
Yeah.
And that's how I looked at it. I'd always think about the people downtown Salt Lake City.
Mm-hmm.
We'd go see the Christmas lights when I was younger, my parents, and I would see these people sitting on the side of the road, and I'd think, what are you doing?
Yeah, what's your problem?
And I was so arrogant to think, that they were just bums, and they weren't people, but they were failures.
Mm-hmm.
They had no goals. They had no, they were dishonest.
Yeah.
They were dirty. They were all those things that I was taught as I grew up not to be in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out soon after that is such arrogant and false thinking on my part. So yeah, 34, I have a couple businesses. I lost a job of 10 years, which kind of got this ball rolling with addiction. And it was shortly after I got terminated from that job, and I feel like I was, in the right in that job, and I was about to get a promotion, so that was a big blow. And this job was helping me fund my two businesses. And so my goal ultimately was to get out of this retail job.
Yeah.
So when I lost this, because I felt like I was doing the right thing, that was a big blow to me. And as a dad, I took it really seriously to provide.
How many kids did you have?
I have three.
3.
2 boys and a girl. My girl's the oldest. Yeah. And so, I grew up with the idea that was my job. My dad was always the one that, brought the money home. My mom stayed at home. And I was taught that is the way it's supposed to be. And so that was ingrained in my head. And, when you start losing a business, I lost a job and I start seeing my businesses crumble. You feel like a failure, not only for obvious reasons, but because I grew up, disappointing my family.
Yeah.
My goal has always been to make it so my wife didn't have to work. If she wanted to work, that was cool with me, but not have to work.
Yeah. So a lot of your self-worth is tied up in just your ability to provide.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I took great pride in that. And I was doing good. I was doing well. And
you probably didn't realize your self-worth was so tied up in it until it started to crumble. Right?
That's exactly right. Exactly. I went from ultimate high, natural high, to just a depression, a type of sadness. Honestly, Taylor, I did not even know existed in this world.
Yeah.
It was a depression that I've never felt before. And, so I didn't know anything about drugs and alcohol when I lost my businesses, but there was a friend that I would hang out with occasionally. I knew lots of people that drank.
Sure.
And they knew I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And it was just that they did that, and that, I didn't judge them. That was their thing. But then when I was at my low, I asked, it's just whatever. They asked me if I wanted to try beer. They knew I was low. And so I was like, I gave up.
Yeah.
At 34.
Yeah.
I said, it doesn't matter. And so I took my first beer.
And was your thought at that moment like, I'm going to try to get drunk? Or were you just like, whatever, I'm too tired to like argue, like I'll just have their stupid beer?
Yeah, to be honest, that's exactly right. To be honest with you, I felt like I was above it at that time still. Like this beer you're offering me, just so you know, I'm above that.
Right.
And that beer is not going to do one thing to help me.
Right.
And that's my attitude as I'm drinking this first beer. And when you're going through stuff, a lot of people will give you advice, do this, go hiking, see a therapist. And I was beyond that point.
Right.
I had an attitude like, don't tell me anything. Don't tell me anything, because I've heard it my whole life. Oh, life will get better. Things will be better. You'll get out of you'll work yourself out of this. You'll see.
All the cliches.
Yeah, and I was so tired of that.
Yeah.
And so I drank that first beer, and I didn't really feel anything. Maybe a little something. And I remember thinking to my friend, "See, I told you. There's nothing there." See, then he says, "Do you want a second one?" If you think so. And so he brings me in the second one. And it was after that second one where I thought, what? What happened? Like, I started to figure out why people may come home from work after a stressful day and drink a beer. I started to figure out for the first time at the age of 34. In fact, I thought, where's this been? I was just so, I didn't know anything about, like, I kept thinking to myself, is this what this does?
Yeah.
Because I grew up with a lot of anxiety and stuff, but it was just,
right.
I felt like literally, Taylor, there was a genie in front of me, and the genie said, I'll grant you one wish. I said, make me happy. And the genie made me happy.
Yeah.
Do you want a third? Of course I want a third.
Yeah.
Do you want a fourth? Do you want a fifth? And by the time I had the fifth, everything was fine.
Yeah.
And that's what started my decade run with addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did one night of debauchery, how did that escalate into like full blown addiction?
Yeah, good question. Well, I knew enough to know that if beer with a lower amount of alcohol did that.
Right. You're like, imagine how I'd feel if I had something hard.
Exactly right. So after those beers, the next 2 days I'll never forget. I was so depressed because when you go high up on a drug, and
Mm-hmm.
alcohol, I firmly 100% believe is a drug,
Mm-hmm.
you have to come down.
Yeah.
And when I came down, I was even more depressed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in my pillow, and there's one word that came to my head: vodka. Because I knew enough to know that if beer, I couldn't get it out of my head. Vodka, vodka, and I kept thinking, I can't do vodka. I don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't do that. It kept coming to my head, and so I'll just Google, where do you get vodka? I'll just Google it.
Yeah.
I had no clue where to get it,
Yeah.
and I lived in Springville at the time, so I'm Googling vodka, and I find it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's in the
Google's-
Provo
yeah.
liquor store.
Sure. No.
That was the closest one.
Yeah.
I found out what time they opened,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like this. It was really weird because it was like this force that I knew it was wrong, but it was so powerful because of that relief.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why you don't try it in the first place. But that there was like this force that brought me to I feel like that brought me to that alcohol store because the whole time I was fighting it.
It's almost like this fever dream, probably,
Yeah.
where you're just like, I feel like that happens with anyone that is like in the throes of addiction, like whether it's a sex addiction, a food addiction, alcohol, whatever. Like when they decide, I'm going to go do this thing, it's like all their other thoughts seem to blur.
It is exactly, and that's exactly what it's like. And it is. It's so powerful, especially when you've been depressed
Mm-hmm.
and life happens. And not everybody will become addicted. And that's the thing. But you find out by trying it.
Yeah.
And that's why you don't try it.
Right. Okay. So you magically appear in this liquor store.
I'm in this liquor store. I'll never forget. I go in and I say to the guy, I'm the first customer there, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
He opens the door. I'm in that. And I say to him, hey, where's the vodka section? I'm thinking a little section like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. It's
He
a
says,
whole
no. Yeah. He says, no, it's the whole wall from the back to the front. The whole wall. And so I go over, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I buy a value size, almost a gallon, just a cheap charcoal vodka.
Yeah.
I buy it, I go home, I close the garage, and I didn't think about my wife being in there or my kids because they can't see that.
Yeah.
My wife would destroy me.
Right.
And so I'm sneaking this vodka up into my room. You know, I walk into the closet and I just wait for the house to settle down. And because kids running everywhere, my wife needed to be downstairs. So that night, and during the day, I'm anxious. I'm nervous. I'm scared. I have all these emotions because I don't know what to expect. Well, the house settles down that night. My wife was doing her thing, and I went upstairs into the closet, had no clue what I was doing, and I just cracked that vodka open, and I just did 4 big gulps like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know anything about mixing it with some flavor or anything.
Yeah.
And I put that cap back on. And on the way down, I was putting it back behind this box of clothes. I thought I was going to puke up everything, but I kept it down. And the thing I remember the most that very first drink is I felt like I was on fire right here.
Mm-hmm.
It burned so bad, and I was drinking some kind of fuel.
Yeah.
And I just waited. I just waited for a few minutes, and that hit. And I ran downstairs and I found my wife and I said, everything's going to be okay. Don't worry about a thing. I'll save the house. I'll pay the bills. I'll get another job. Don't worry about a thing. Where's the kids? I haven't seen the kids because I've been in my pillow for 2 weeks. I said, where's the kids? What do you want to do? You want to go to the park? Want to go to the zoo?
Mm-hmm.
Want to go to Olive Garden? You know, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And my wife is looking at me like, what happened?
Yeah.
Because I've been so quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I've been depressed. And so that went on. And the best part I felt at that point was when I could feel it coming down,
Mm-hmm.
I went to the closet.
Yeah.
right back here.
Mm-hmm.
I'd come down, closet back here.
Yeah.
And I thought that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
You know, closet here, closet here, alcohol store two more.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for a couple weeks.
And she couldn't smell it on you?
She caught me about day 3.
Yeah.
She knew something was, she didn't know how bad it was.
Yeah.
And that's just because I passed out.
Right.
I was new to it. I didn't know when to stop.
Right.
It was 2 weeks time. I was a full-blown non-functioning alcoholic.
Wow.
And what I mean by that is my kids, they had to step over me to get in their bedrooms at night to go to sleep.
Mm.
I did lose my house.
Yeah.
I lost almost everything. Everything you can imagine. I got a DUI. I booked into Utah County Jail. Things that I've never imagined would happen to me, you know.
In 2 weeks' time.
2 weeks' time,
Yeah.
I was a full-blown alcoholic, and I stayed an alcoholic for 2 solid years.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst part about that, Taylor, is that I don't remember my kids.
Right.
With a few exceptions.
Yeah. It's a little 2-year period that's lost.
Right.
Yeah.
And I tell the kids in the school, you can't get time back. We all know that.
Yeah.
And that's difficult. You know, that's difficult when your kids are young. So I got this DUI, moved my kids out of a great neighborhood into a bad neighborhood on the west side of Provo. I didn't care. I was just drunk.
Mm-hmm.
What I put those 4 through, my wife and my 3 kids, is unimaginable, and I can't imagine what they went through. But that's what happened, and I was an alcoholic from that time for the next 2 years to follow. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what was, once your wife caught you and stuff, what was her reaction? Was she confrontive about it, or?
She was very surprised. She wanted to help me right away.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted to fix it. She wanted to get rid of it.
Yeah.
She said, we'll work through this. Very supportive.
But she didn't show up with anger. She showed up with
disappointment.
Yeah.
Hurt.
Uh-huh.
Very surprised.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it was happening when she actually saw the bottle.
Right.
Because we don't do that.
Well, and it was just so not congruent with your personality and your past.
Right. Right. No, you're exactly right. I was that citizen, I guess, that just.
You're just clean cut, straight laced.
Clean cut. Yeah. If you would have asked me when I was 30, if in 40 years I would be an alcoholic, I would say you're absolutely insane.
Right.
You're absolutely crazy.
Right.
Because
but a 2-week period of hell and the perfect storm, like unemployed.
Yeah.
In the throes of depression, you're with some friends that are, they probably didn't mean so much malice, but they kind of preyed on your weak state a little bit.
That's exactly right.
Knowing that, like this is the time we can actually maybe get him to drink.
Right.
And so all those elements just combine, and yeah, 2 weeks later you're passed out on your floor.
Yeah, it was amazing, and I started to understand. I started to understand why people would take a drink of alcohol or a drug
mm-hmm.
and follow it to the streets of South Salt Lake City, where I used to think those were just bums.
Yeah.
Because it was so powerful for me. I will tell you, I would have, in that moment, I would have followed it to the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how powerful it was for me, and I was addicted like that.
And so for you, was it pretty quickly, was it like, okay, this is something that is essentially erasing my depression?
Yes.
And getting rid of the dark thoughts and making life livable. It's making it so I don't end my life.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what was happening?
That's absolutely exactly what was happening. Anytime I started to feel, because remember, I lost my income,
mm-hmm.
right? I lost it all. And the depression I felt, I can't even explain. And that alcohol squashed it.
Yeah.
And that's why.
And got rid of the anxiety.
Anxiety gone. You didn't care. I mean, it's sad. You see your kids suffering, you see your wife suffering, but
Yeah.
Just numb it.
Yeah.
Just numb it. And that's how a lot of people just stay addicted. They can't deal with the reality of where I was.
Mm-hmm.
Lost everything. And so you just keep drinking and you stay numb.
Yeah, it's insidious because
Yeah.
you start drinking for one reason, but then now you're on top of your normal depression you had for losing your job or whatever else. Now you're depressed because you're an alcoholic,
Yes.
right? Now you're
Yes.
depressed because your kids are suffering and your wife is
Right.
upset, like, and so you continue to drink, and then you wake up depressed because you're hungover, and you're like, why did I do this again? So it's this
Yeah.
never-ending cycle.
It is, and it's very sad. It is very sad. It grabs you. And even though, so whenever I would come down, I never let myself come down below here.
Yeah.
Because when I would get to here, I hated feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So you go back up.
Yeah.
And it's just a repeat process.
Yeah. So before all this happened, do you think you struggled with addressing your feelings or feeling your feelings, really going there when something came up?
I think so. I think I did. I grew up with not very much confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot to prove. I wasn't good in school. In fact, I didn't even graduate from high school.
Mm-hmm.
I was the typical redhead, small kind of guy that got bullied. I felt alone, and that followed me.
Yeah.
And as I got older and learned a couple things, I wanted to change things around, but that sticks with you.
Yeah.
Anxiety, trauma,
Yeah.
depression, that just doesn't float away. And I learned that later. And so, yeah, I mean, I dealt with those things up until that point. I did.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I didn't really know exactly why. But since then, I've been able to put some things together and work through that.
Yeah. So did this escalate? Did you get into drugs as well?
Yeah, so what happened is I was drinking. So I told you about the bottle that was this big, almost a gallon. So I was drinking half of that every day.
Yeah.
And just I was just drinking. I was, like I said, I maintained here.
Yeah.
Buzz is here, drunk is here.
Mm-hmm.
And I just maintained this. And I was drinking so much. I started feeling really sick on year 2, like really sick. So my wife made an appointment with my doctor, and he did the blood run. And we wanted to really check the liver.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back, and he says, man, your liver is tanking it. Like it's tanking it.
Yeah.
And he's like a year and a half if you don't stop.
Mm.
When I heard that, drinking was my life.
Yeah.
I didn't want to deal with anything. And so...
Would you continue to kind of drink in private, or would you start drinking with your friends and go out? Or were you essentially, like, your family knew, but would you kind of remain a closet drinker, so to speak?
I didn't. The thing that happened is when I got that diagnosis, I had a couple options. Keep my family or die.
Yeah.
And we had nothing. So I moved into the basement of my mother-in-law's house. How about that? For a slap in the face.
Yeah.
That's a very, probably the worst thing you can do as, you're as a father, as a husband.
Yeah, just not great for the ego.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was sick, but I was determined to get off.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a 10-month period there where I'll never forget the good part, which was my kids.
Mm-hmm.
My kids were so happy their dad was back.
Yeah.
We could be picking up trash in the front yard. If I was there, they were cool.
Yeah.
I was their hero,
literally. Just any moment to be with him.
Yeah. I've got pictures of them looking at me. And they're just so happy that I was back. And
isn't it cool how unconditionally kids love you?
It's amazing.
Like, I'm sure they went through their own hurt, but they were so young that they're just like, yeah, we don't care. We just want our dad back, right?
Right. And that's all they wanted.
Yeah.
That's all they wanted. And I will never forget that 10 months. We did everything together. And the way that they looked at me, I'll never forget that. So I knew I needed to get a job. And so I can't sell houses. I was a real estate broker. I can't do that in the state of Utah. I can't do that with a criminal record. I had experience in retail, so I found a job as a store manager in Midvale, Utah, on 7200 South and State Street. And it was right before the holidays. I was working 80 hours a week at a job I hated.
Yeah.
You know, when you're working for yourself, you make your own schedule. You go to the beach when you want,
right.
That type of thing. And now when I'm working for somebody else, I had 4 employees, should have had 8 to 9 right before the holidays. The street itself, 72, a lot of people don't know this, but 7200 South and just off State Street, I think is one of the craziest streets in all of Salt Lake City, and I have been on almost all of them. And there's a Motel 6, and there's just all this crazy stuff, drugs coming in and out. And I'm in this job, and I'm just miserable. I can't go out to the trunk of my car and numb it up a little with that vodka. And so I'm in this store, and this is where...
Are you like a few weeks sober? Are you still kind of drinking a little bit?
I'm 10 months sober.
Okay, you're 10 months sober.
I was done.
Yeah, and drinking. You just white-knuckled it.
White-knuckled it.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. It was crazy. Had a lot of people like praying for me, and it was amazing I was able to get off of that. It was horrific. It took me 9 weeks to get off of that. My wife would take these water bottles and put half orange juice and half vodka, and I'd taper off this slowly.
Yeah.
Because drinking as much as I did, you can't just cut it.
Right.
It could be very dangerous. So I was sober for 10 months when I got this job.
Okay.
And I didn't have any customers for the first hour and a half, but this one lady. And this one lady came in for one reason, and that was to get the supply she needed for the bar that she worked at in South Salt Lake City. She was the head bartender. And because she came in every day and I didn't have customers, we got to talk.
Yeah.
And we got to know each other. She knew I was an alcoholic. I can't have alcohol. She knew I was anxiety, depression. I was miserable in this store. And she comes in one day and basically she says this: I've got something for you. I've been doing it for 3 to 4 years. You're going to love it. High functioning, no depression, energy, throw the rock stars away. She said this 3 times, I'll never forget. It's odorless. It's odorless. It's not like alcohol where people can smell it coming off your body. It's odorless.
Yeah.
And then she said, your wife won't know. What are you doing? So she brings out of her purse a bag about this big. And she puts it in my hand. Now, I've never seen drugs in real life. I knew it was a drug, though, at that point. And I'm looking down at this as she says, what that is crystal meth. And I thought, crystal meth? Because when I thought about crystal meth, people did crystal meth, I'm thinking about people downtown Salt Lake just like tweaking out.
Yeah, just vagrants.
And they're crazy and they're moving. And I'm looking at her, and she just told me 3 to 4 years. She didn't look like anybody. She holds down a job, holds down a conversation. And so I'm doing the math here.
The meth.
The math. It's not like alcoholic where I'll be on the ground, high functioning, depression, anxiety gone. No one will know. It's just the opposite of alcohol.
Yeah.
And it's like that cartoon where you have the devil kind of speaking in this ear and you have the good person, because I promised myself when I came off alcohol, I would never get addicted to anything again.
Right.
But that power, that pull, this is why you just don't start.
In 10 months, you're still pretty weak. Probably.
I'm still pretty weak. Yeah. I just got off alcohol. I'm starting to try to figure out who I am and what my strengths are. I'm in a store where, I was failing because I needed help. It was new. It was right before the holidays. My manager would come in, you're not doing this and that. And I didn't have people, and I didn't know how to fix that. And so it was a very depressing situation on top of that.
Yeah.
So 10 months sober. And so I'm holding this drug as she starts to leave. And I said to her, you got to come back. I have no clue what to do with this.
Right.
And at the time, I was thinking I can't do it. But at the same time, it was almost like I can't do it, but I want to know just in case.
Yeah, in case I'm in a bad spot.
Bad spot. I'll just have that
Let me
just
just
in
save
case.
this.
You start justifying all
Yeah.
this stuff. So I asked her to step back from the door and give me a lesson.
Yeah.
And so she gave me the lesson. There's 4 or 5 different ways you can do the drug. She smoked the drug, and she gave me everything I needed to do that drug that day. And as soon as she left, unfortunately, that's exactly what I did. I went back to my office, and I did the drug kind of.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let's see. I knew it worked because of my energy, but my anxiety went up. I was disappointed by that. But my energy, I remember closing the store that night and working all night long. My energy, I was just, my wife's calling, where are you? I said, I'm still working. You've been there for 15 hours. I know, I got to get this work done. Day 2, I get into my filing, about 10 o'clock in the morning. I haven't left the store. And I get into my filing cabinet where this is locked. And I got it out, and I did 6, 7, let's just be hits of the drug.
Mm-hmm.
And now, my anxiety and depression,
Yeah.
and I feel like Superman.
Right.
Energy just keeps going. And I couldn't believe it. And my wife, I worked all night again. Locked this. My wife's, okay, where you been? You're out messing around. I said, no, come to the store and see I'm here. So that kind of thing. Day 3 is where everything changed. The darkest day of my life is day 3. Because I did the drug in the morning, and I did the drug in the afternoon. And by that night, I had lost all compassion for anything and everything with a heartbeat.
Wow.
And I'll never forget how dark that was for me. I feel bad. There's an elderly woman who lived behind the store, would come in every day. She knew my name. I knew her. She loved me. I loved her. She made me feel better. It's like my grandma. No one messed with her.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember her on the night of day 3. She would yell my name. She'd just stand before you, James, and I would come. But I didn't come. I heard her name. And it was so dark. And then I see her coming down the aisle. And it was everything I could do to stay in conversation with this lady so I didn't just hurt her.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even remember really how that ended, but I do remember going back to my office, thinking to myself, what is happening? Because I've always loved people.
Mm-hmm.
And I just looked through people. Day 4, same thing, morning and night, and that's when it was over.
Yeah.
Store manager, I take the keys out of my pocket, I put them on the front counter, say nothing. I'm numb, nothing matters, and I go home. So if you're in that store that night, everything for you was for free.
Right.
Because I just left. I was completely numb, invincible. I didn't care about anything or anybody. And I went home. And let me know if I'm speaking too much.
No, you're great.
I went home and I was getting this bag. I'll never forget. It was like a black bag. I'm getting ready because I'm going to leave. And my wife is looking at me like, James, what are you doing? And I said, I'm leaving. I said, couples need time. We need space. And she's like, James, tell me where you're going. And I said, it's none of your business. I have never talked to my wife like that.
Yeah.
I said, I'm leaving for a couple weeks. I'll be back. Don't call me. Don't GPS me. Just leave me alone. I have never done that. If I ever went anywhere for 2 days, my wife would have come with me.
Yeah.
And I'm telling her 10 months after, we came off the hardest 2 years of our marriage of me being an alcoholic. I'm telling her I'm leaving for 2.5 weeks, and I'm not telling her where I'm going. And before I shut the door in her face, literally, I said, and by the way, I quit my job. And I'll never forget how when I got my car, I sat there and I thought, that was easy. No compassion. That was easy.
Yeah.
And I left.
What was your plan? I'm going to go just on a bender and not have to deal with responsibilities and...
Yeah, that drug had me on day 4. And my goal, my plan was I just got a few things. I had to find that drug.
Yeah.
I had to know where to get it, how much it was, and how to stay in stock.
Yeah.
And that was my mission. And it turns out I followed that drug to that bar where that head bartender worked, where I found it. And I lived in this bar literally for the next year and a half, 98% of the time.
Yeah.
I've never even been in a bar before.
Right.
Ever. I've been in a liquor store,
Right.
never a bar. And the bar owner lived a couple blocks away. I'd shower and things at her house. But I am in this bar 98% of the time, putting the booze together, sleeping. But you're up for 5 days, you crash. You're up for 6 days, crash. Up for 4 days. It was just like one big blur, you know? A lot of people will ask me, James, wait a second. You were in a bar. You were an alcoholic. How did that work out for you?
Yeah.
That's how powerful meth was.
Yeah.
I was completely numb.
You're like, I've got my high. I don't need.
Yeah. And in the bar at the time, we'd close it at 2 a.m, and here comes every drug. And I tried them all that you can imagine. There's almost like a sales meeting. Like people were showing you what they got, the quality. I had no desire to do anything other than meth. It just kept me numb, and I didn't care. No vodka, no temptation with alcohol. It's just absolutely amazing. And I was just numb. And that is the only way I could have ever left my 3 kids and my wife, because you're just numb.
Yeah.
There's just like no way you could do that.
Yeah. You just become a different person.
A different person completely. And whenever I started feeling, it would go down on the drug. I would start thinking, my kids, what? And I always think about this destroys me. And I tell the kids in the schools can you imagine my kids coming downstairs? They were asleep when I left. And they find out their dad's gone and they just got him back. You know, you can't even imagine. I can't imagine what they were going through. And the same with my wife. And my kids, I kept thinking about how my kids were looking at me, and I was completely gone.
Yeah.
For the next 5.5 years.
Yeah.
Solid. I left them.
So did your wife figure out where you were? Did you have any contact with her?
No, she didn't know where I was. I think she started to figure out a few things. I talked to my kids.
Did you come back and like get some stuff? You were just gone.
I was gone.
You were like the guy that goes out for a pack of cigarettes and never comes back.
Yeah, I was gone. That drug, like I say, it had me. I call it the drug of all drugs. I mean, I think anybody that's addicted to maybe a heroin, they would feel the same about their drug. But this drug, it was, I mean, it had me on day 4. It really had me on day 1. And she started to figure out a thing. But I talked to my kids 10 times, 15 times in that whole 5.5 years.
Yeah.
You know, you lose track of time. Oh, Christmas is tomorrow? Oh. My kids. And so you just get high. And then that didn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and so you just rinse and repeat. And as long as I was high, I could do that. But I hated coming low because I knew the reality of where I was.
Yeah.
And, you know, I got texts and calls when I first left from my kids. Dad, what happened?
How old are your kids?
At that point in time, they were like 8, 10, 12.
So old enough to understand something's bad's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my 2 boys especially, they were a little bit younger, and they would be crying on the phone, Dad, where'd you go? Text. And did I answer any of them? No. Because you can't handle it. And so you just stay numb. And that's the horrible thing about this drug. And so that's what I did for the next 5.5 years, is I just stayed numb. You know, the bar goes out of business after 1.5 years, and you just you figure out I've lived in garages, storage units. 24-hour fitness was a fun one for me. You pay the $20 a month and you get to go inside in the winter when you're freezing to death, and you can take a shower and stay warm. And then just the opposite. In the summer, you can go in and stay cool and take a shower.
Yeah.
So 24-hour Walmart supercenters were big. The 24-hour fitness, emergency room parking lots were mostly where I would stay.
Yeah.
And I wasn't one of those. Usually it's the injectors that you see that are kind of like this.
Yeah.
I was really mellow.
Mm-hmm.
And I could sit in my car for 3 days.
Yeah.
And time did not even matter. And yeah, so that was my life for the next 5.5 years solid.
Wow. So
Yeah.
so what was the impetus for getting out of that?
Well, I remember I was in about year 5. I was losing weight because you don't eat.
Mm-hmm.
When you're on meth, you don't have an appetite. And you don't sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a before and after picture.
You're just deeply unhealthy.
It's completely unhealthy. And I was weighing 104, 105 pounds.
Yeah, and you're like 6'1", 6'2".
So yeah, 5'9". And I really felt my time was coming to an end at year 5. Nothing to be proud of, but your tolerance as you do the drug goes up and up.
Mm-hmm.
To maintain that high, you have to do more and more. And so by the time of year 5, I could out smoke 3 big, huge dudes easy to just maintain that high. And I really felt I was near death. I felt it.
Are you living on the streets, or you're just going wherever you can?
I was at that point in time every night, as a sense of comfort, I would stay in emergency room parking lots.
Mm-hmm.
It's just for a sense of comfort.
Yeah.
And I would remember praying. I was just like, how do I get out of this? And it was a week later, I got arrested in a drug deal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what got the ball rolling. And I wanted to quit. I just didn't know how to do it. And so, you know, I got arrested. I was put in jail for possession of meth.
Mm-hmm.
I was in there for 12 hours, and I was lucky to get bailed out. And I knew at that point that I needed to take that opportunity, even though I couldn't even imagine not using, and do my best to get off.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was going to get probation or I was going to go to jail.
Yeah.
And so it was 6 months before I saw the judge. And I tried to get off 2 or 3 times. I did it in front of the drug world. It's not the best idea because it's in front of you. And I wasn't able to. And it was the night before I saw the judge. And this is February 19th, 2018. I was in my garage and I stepped on my pipes, emotional. And it was over. I knew it was over because I knew I was getting drug tested. I knew it was over.
Oh, your meth pipes.
My meth pipes, sorry, yeah. I stepped on them, crushed them. I went inside. It was emotional because that's your life, you know.
Yeah.
And I knew it was coming. I've heard what's coming. It's a you know, alcohol is a physical thing and it's a mental thing, but meth is physical. A lot of things happen with meth, but a mental torment, depression. So I knew it was coming. So I cut cold turkey.
Yeah.
I'm in court the next day. And I got probation. I got probation for 24 months. Yeah. And that I was thankful for. But it's difficult. I mean, you got your probation officers coming in the middle of the night, ripping stuff up, and they look like the SWAT team. And
right.
They're looking for drugs. And you have an app where you put in your offender number. And every morning you have to do that to see if you drug test that day. So it's not fun.
Yeah.
And I was able to get off in 6 months if you follow the rules. And I wanted to get off. So I followed every rule. And I got off after 6 months. And it was right then when I first started speaking.
When you started getting clean, did you reach out to your family, or were you like, I want to make sure I'm clean?
Yeah. My wife, believe it or not, she bailed me out.
Oh, wow.
Of South Salt Lake County Jail. And when I'm talking about this in my presentations, I still don't know why. I still don't. It's a miracle. It wasn't cheap either.
Because you hadn't really been talking those last 5 years.
No. And so when you get arrested, they take your cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
And all my numbers were in my cell phone, but I remembered my wife's.
Yeah.
I just remember my wife's, and that was the only one. By the way, when you do meth, it's killing your brain cells. So I couldn't remember. By that time, my short-term memory was just,
Yeah.
but I could visualize my wife's. And I remember calling a couple times, and she would just hang up.
Yeah.
And I don't blame her. I kept calling, and it was about the fourth time. You know, when you're in the drug world, you're smooth at talking.
Right.
You lie.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just, Emily, I'll pay you back. I got the money. Just come and bail, that kind of thing, knowing that I was not going to be able to do that. And here she comes with a friend, and I sit in the back seat, and she did it. She bailed me out. And to this day, I don't get it. And I was able to go back to the house, and I was kind of downstairs while my kids were in the middle. And my wife was upstairs. She didn't just wait for 5 years, 5.5 years. So don't get me wrong there. She went on with her life. But it was the best situation I could possibly hope for. Because I was out of the drug world in a good environment, no drugs. My kids were there. And my wife was upstairs, who I was hoping someday she would, forgive me and we could get back together.
Yeah.
And so I started doing the schools, and that was a very big blessing to me.
Yeah.
And that's when I started.
Tell me a little bit about, man, you you stopped drinking cold turkey and then you stopped meth cold turkey. Talk to me a little bit about withdrawals and going from, we talked about the powers and the grip addiction has on you, but what's it like those first 3 or 4 days, that first week when you're just cold turkey?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and I get that question quite a bit. What happens when you do a drug like I did, as hard as I did?
Mm-hmm.
I say it simply because I'm used to talking to kids, so bear with me.
Yeah.
But I tell the kids that we all have the critters in our head that make the happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Their job is to make the happiness for us. When you do a drug as hard as I did drugs, or anybody, those critters go, oh, that drug's making the happiness, and they go on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you come off cold turkey and you don't have the basic critters to even help you, that coming off meth was the single hardest thing, because the hardest thing I ever did was come off meth, because the critters weren't there, and I was just simply in my pillow for a month.
Mm-hmm.
Just to get a drink of water was impossible. I could see the water, and it's hard to explain, really. The depression was so bad. And the good news is that after time, sometimes, most of the time, those critters will come back.
Yeah.
And they did. But it took a while. But I wouldn't wish that on anybody, because I thought I was depressed when I lost my businesses.
Mm-hmm.
But that was like a picnic.
Yeah.
Compared to this. And so it's hard to explain. So I really can't. But they say that when you first take your first hit of meth, you can think about the happiest point that you have ever been in your life. If you think about that, and then times that by 10.
Yeah.
That's what it's like
when
you start doing meth. And then when you come off, take the worst period of time in your life and times it by 10.
Yeah. Wow.
And that I found that to be true for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really difficult.
So the mental, like, I'm sure physically the toll it took on your body was difficult, but it sounds like the mental was so horrific that's what was harder.
It was because, Taylor, what happened is you wake up and I'm 41, 42, and you don't have the critters making the happiness, and I don't have the drug to numb me.
Yeah.
And you're looking around, in every direction I could see destruction that I caused.
Right.
I caused. I have friends that were getting ready could retire, 5 or 6 years. I had nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. You see exactly what you did to your kids,
Mm-hmm.
what I did to my wife, what I put them through. And so, and then the drug, and I deal with it to this day. You don't sleep for 5 years, so I couldn't sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm up in the middle of the night. In the nighttime, it seems like it was worse. All these thoughts come. You walk around your house, and it just is never ending. I would be here. I'd be there. I just wasted all this time. And so that's a big part of it too, is, I was going to be that business owner.
Yeah.
I was going to be the guy. My wife was never going to have to worry about working.
Right.
My kids would have the necessities of a life. That was my job. And just, it was just a completely different outcome.
Yeah. I mean, it's no wonder why so many people that are trying to quit drugs or are in some stage of their addiction end their lives, right? Because that period of darkness, like, it's got to feel like this will never end.
It does. And it's, I'm really trying to come up with the words to describe it. Just dark, just really hopeless. The good news is I had a support team.
Mm-hmm.
My wife wanted to help me.
Yeah.
My kids, especially my boys and my girl. But my girl was a little bit older, so she saw more of what her mom went through.
Yeah.
But my boys, they were so happy.
Yeah.
And we got tight. And then my girl and I, we slowly built our relationship. So we're kind of like that. We're back together. We're a family again.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have them, and I had a good support, I had friends.
Yeah.
Tommy, one of them.
Yeah.
And a couple other good friends. And you're getting a lot of attention. I got right into schools.
Mm-hmm.
And you got the social media stuff, and you got the likes and all that. We all love that. And I was getting a lot of attention, so that helped a lot of me to get through that. I was somebody.
Yeah.
I was contributing to the world. And that was huge, because I could go to schools, and I felt like I took so much from everybody, that going and doing service, helping somebody, was a big, huge factor in me staying sober.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that feeling you get, when you help someone, you genuinely help someone, that's a powerful feeling. And I'm sure what I'm talking about.
And that's your new that's your new addiction now.
Yeah.
Right? Because it feeds you in some way, at least.
Absolutely.
Talk to me a little bit about what kind of woman your wife is. After all those years of pain and destruction, to have the kind of heart she does to forgive you and to love you again, and to not trash you to your kids, and to not,
Yeah. This is why she doesn't come to my presentations, but this is a great question. And this is a different setting. If my wife was sitting there, I couldn't answer this. My wife is the strongest person I know. I remember her telling me that when I left, now she has 9 siblings, and then her family's to the north. My family, I have 4 brothers and a sister, is to the south. She had plenty of people she could have called for support. For 9 months, she told nobody after I left.
Wow.
And the reason why she didn't do that is because she was hoping I would come back, and she wouldn't have to tell him.
So she always believed in you.
Yeah.
With no reason to.
Right. I mean, I completely left. So she's out. She hadn't worked for 10 years. She goes and gets a temporary job during Christmas as a part-time cashier, not even knowing if she's going to be able to keep that job. She knew she had to do something. So now all of a sudden she's a single mom, no income.
Mm-hmm.
And she starts working hard, doing the best she can. She starts getting promoted, and she keeps going up the chain as a single mom. I mean, what she did is absolutely incredible. She was one step away from being the store manager. She finished that. She did. It's just amazing what she did. I can't imagine what she went through. I know she was on her bed because my kids told me
Yeah.
every night, just in tears, just what happened. Like,
Yeah, just brokenhearted.
yeah. For her, and for her to wait 9 months hoping, and then after that 9 months, people will say, "Where's James?" Her family, "Where's James? Where's James?" He's struggling.
Yeah.
And that's about all she would say. But he'll be okay.
Yeah.
No one knew on her side of the family that I was on meth until I got sober off meth.
Wow.
Yeah. And I guess when you're in front of something very, very good, you can it's easier to take advantage and not really fully understand what I had with her.
Mm-hmm.
And now I do.
Yeah.
And for sure. And she didn't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. I mean, I talk about this all the time. She was the best. I would come home from work and she was by the door waiting for me. She just wanted to be with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all she wanted. And she was a great mother. And that's all she wanted. And then I leave and I realize that trust is broken.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have that. And I want that so bad. And it's getting better, but you can't expect her to just be like, oh, right?
Yeah.
She's not at that door when I come home. She's heard.
Yeah.
And so it takes time to get that trust back, and that's what I'm really working hard on, because I want that back.
Right.
I want to come home and I want Emily back.
Yeah.
The Emily that was there before I bombed it.
Right.
You know? And that's for her to just, for me to be able to sit here and say that she is still part of my life is a miracle.
Yeah.
It really is. You don't hear about that kind of thing.
I mean, you kind of won the lottery after,
For sure.
After being in the gutter for years.
For sure. And she says, what do she supports me. She supported me right away in these schools.
Mm-hmm.
Like right away. And on top of that, her mother and her father, they first saw me. I remember I went to a church for a church function. It was like a baptism. None of their family have seen me for 5.5 years.
Yeah.
They just knew I was gone, that I was going through stuff.
Yeah.
And I show up to this baptism, and her mom comes straight up to me and just hugs me. Who does that?
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm sure
if that happened to my daughter.
I'm sure they had their assumptions.
Yeah.
Knew it was drug related, but
right.
There was no judgment. It was just love.
Just love.
Yeah.
And I have a daughter, and I'm telling you, if someone did that to my daughter, I don't know if I could be so loving.
Yeah.
I would want to hurt them probably, you know, I would. And I just can't believe the confidence they had in me, that I would get things straightened out,
mm-hmm.
the support that they had for me to go to these schools, and they got right behind me on that.
Yeah.
And they knew it was always a passion of mine to speak, and I never thought I would speak my personal experience with substance abuse. That was for the losers on the street, not for me.
Yeah.
They got behind me on that, and honestly, without my wife and her family and my family as well,
mm-hmm.
there's no way I would be sitting here sober. There's no way.
Yeah.
And to be doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Well, what a beautiful lesson on unconditional love, because and listen, you can make the fair argument that maybe your wife should have left you and never,
for sure,
and never even let you back in because she'd been hurt and she'd lost trust and all the, maybe she should have set boundaries or whatever, but I don't know, every once in a while there's a love that transcends all that stuff.
Yeah,
And because I do think there's scenarios where the wife should leave, you know,
absolutely.
and should not deal with bad behavior and toxic behavior, and do what's best for the family. But I just love that I feel like she always knew you'd get better.
I I think you're exactly right. This is the only thing I can think of. I've asked her many times, Emily, honestly tell me, have you talked bad about me?
Yeah.
Have you not even talked bad about me? No. For 5.5 years, you didn't vent to somebody? She says, I've vented, but I've never talked bad about you.
Yeah.
She was concerned.
Yeah. And that's the kind of love we need.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know any greater love
Yeah.
than this. And so our marriage, it's getting better all the time, you
Yeah.
know, and I'm getting my Emily back,
Yeah.
who's special. He was very, very special. And hopefully when I come home from work, she's at the door and
Yeah.
we have that again. And we're getting closer and closer. You know, for me, it's not talk.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep doing action.
Right. Right.
You know, talk doesn't matter at this
Yeah.
point. She wants to see action, and she's seen it for, you know, for quite a few years.
Yeah.
And so we just hope that it keeps getting better. And after all that we've been through, I can't imagine that it wouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, God had his hand in this
Mm-hmm.
for sure. And like we've mentioned, just for her to be here is a miracle. So.
Yeah. That's beautiful. What's the conversation like with your kids when you are finally comfortable in your sobriety? You trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're back in your home. You're with your wife. You're spending more time with your kids. They obviously are getting older enough. They have questions. They want to know why dad left.
Yeah.
What he was doing.
Yeah.
What's that conversation like with those kids?
Yeah. I remember coming home, and my kids were old enough by then. My daughter was a sophomore, I believe, in high school or junior. And so my youngest, I believe, was in junior high, just starting junior high. So yeah, they were old enough. And I got with each one of them. I said, listen, if there's ever any questions you have, come and talk to me.
Let's be an open door about
Let's
it.
be open door. I will never get mad at you. I promise I'll never get mad at you. And I laid it all out.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I did. This is where I've been. These are the things I did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I absolutely don't want you guys to go through this. And I took responsibility, like I think everybody that comes out of it should. That doesn't do anybody any good to be like sugarcoated, I don't think.
Yeah.
Maybe in some situations, if they're younger, I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told them where I lived. I told them I was in storage units. I told them, you know, I lived in my car. I told them that I thought about them. I told them that I would cry, wondering what. I told them, like, they know everything.
Yeah.
And I said, as time goes on, because there's trauma there,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's trauma there. My boys, they just got their dad back, and my girl needed me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of studies on relationships with your daughters, right? And how important it is for your daughter to have a good relationship with their father.
Yeah.
It kind of sets them up. So my daughter, what happens is your daughter, and a lot of times, not always, they'll look for validation with any guy.
Right. Right. I mean, they don't call it daddy issues for nothing.
Exactly. That's the word I was saying. That's the great way to put it. And so they want that validation. And my girl had some medical things she was dealing with, some major medical, so her confidence wasn't good. And she needed me.
Yeah.
Bad. And I wasn't there. So yeah, we talk about everything with my kids. I'm open. There's nothing that they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
They know, what I did to their mother. They know everything. And again, with them, it's action.
Yeah.
It's not talk,
Right.
So you come home from in that world, you go to the grocery store, so you're going to come back, right?
Yeah.
Well, you keep coming back,
Right.
type of thing. So
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about speaking in schools. It feels like that's something that started to kind of breathe life back into you.
yeah,
You started doing it really quick after you first got sober from meth. Um,
yeah,
what is your ultimate goal and aim there? Like, obviously, you want to kind of preach, you know, avoid substances.
yeah,
Don't get started. There's never a point where you're like impervious to temptation, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's been a journey. Um, when I got home, I got sober. I had a good friend that was a health teacher. I think I may have mentioned that, and she had connections, and she just asked me to come in and speak, and that was a quick, presentation, and then she put my name out there,
Yeah.
and that never happens. And then I started getting calls, and I started going to schools, and then I started recording my presentation, and it's something I always wanted to do. Taylor, I always wanted to speak
Yeah.
with youth.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I didn't think it would be on this subject. But as I got going, I would go to schools. I'd learn more about stuff, but I'd put myself in the kids' seats. And I'd really try to become a student of my business, so to speak. I wanted to be the best substance abuse speaker that they've ever come across.
Yeah.
And so I would record every presentation. I'd go home and I'd listen to it as if I was a student.
Yeah.
And I did that for the first 30 schools. And I just tried to become better and better. What's going to be the impact? What's going to make the biggest impression, and I figured out things about me, and pretty soon I was just booked.
Yeah.
And that's not to boost me up or anything, but it's a miracle. That doesn't happen. I mean, I have people call me and message me on social media every week. How do you get
Speaking gigs.
speaking gigs?
Yeah.
Because it's hard.
Right.
I said I don't know. I spoke once
Mhm.
and then it just spread.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing, if I'm going to be honest, that people that want to get into this industry, be vulnerable.
Yeah.
These kids don't want fake.
Yeah.
They can read right through fake every single time. And we're in a generation where these kids are on TikTok, and attention span
Yeah.
is about 1.4 seconds.
Right. Whatever they're consuming, it better be
Yeah.
amazing,
Yeah, right.
or they're gone.
Right. And
Yeah.
so I've studied public speaking, and Tommy even knows this from when we were on the mission together. That I love to speak, but I was a student of that. I'd watch YouTube videos. I'd watch people speak, and I learned different things. I'd read books. I mean, I was just into it, a student of the business. I learned that you have 30 seconds to grab those guys, the student's attention, or it's over.
Yeah.
You have 30 seconds, and that you got to come out of that gate with a PowerPoint,
Right.
like a powerful thing that they go, what? And you have to have those PowerPoints. I say PowerPoint, but I should say I have a PowerPoint presentation with every picture happening
Right.
behind me of the world.
Mhm.
Like I tell them that everything I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to show you a real picture of what that is
Yeah.
behind me. And that makes a big impression. They like that. But I also know that they need something that grabs their attention that's big every 2 minutes
Right.
to keep that engagement for an hour and 20 minutes. And so I've been able to do that. And you just learn how to control the kids, and it's a challenge to me.
Sure.
And I tell the teachers all the time, if I don't get 100% engagement, I haven't done my job. And I really believe that.
Yeah.
Because that's what they asked me to come in and do. And I feel lucky that I've been able to do this with a few exceptions. There's been a few, but you learn how to bring these kids back in. You know what they're going through, and these kids today, and a lot of people say they're entitled, they're this and that, and there's a lot of negative out there about these kids. But I'm going to tell you, my personal opinion is we're dealing with the strongest group of youth that the world has ever seen. What they're dealing out there, dealing with out there in the world is absolute. I feel like I had a picnic in high school compared to these kids. They're dealing with a drug that I did not even know existed while I was in the drug world, fentanyl. Right. And that's the number one cause of death for their age group. It's scary.
Yeah.
And they're dealing with fitting in on, they got the social media, they're, the bowling, they got all that type of stuff.
And there's pills everywhere.
There's pills everywhere, and they're looking on the news, and none of that's positive because the positive doesn't sell. It's the negative. And then, I spend a lot of time trying to get them to understand the worth of each one of them. I don't care if they're failing that grade that they're in or they're getting straight A's. That their worth is just as good as the one that are getting straight A's.
Yeah.
And I try to bring that into it because school can tend to, if you let it, it did for me. I flunked out of school and my confidence was ruined. And so I hit that pretty good. These kids need confidence because that's the most important thing. When you have confidence, you start accomplishing things.
Right.
And I believe that.
Yeah, because if you could go back and eliminate some of your self-esteem issues, maybe you wouldn't have taken that first drink because losing your job wouldn't have affected you so much.
Right.
Right? Because you would have had confidence, be like, well, that sucked. I'll go get another job.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And there's people that I've talked to that have been in my same situation that have done just that.
Yeah.
I had plan A, B, and C, and I thought I was 30. That's not going to happen.
Right.
I tell the kids, you need to have a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. What are you going to do when your grandmother passes away?
Right.
What are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a plan?
Right.
Have you been smoking marijuana? Because I'm going to tell you that marijuana all of a sudden isn't going to be strong enough.
Right.
And whenever you find marijuana, you're not that far away from the strong drugs.
Mm-hmm.
You're really not.
Right.
And it's easier and easier every day to find them. So what are you going to do? You already know the marijuana you're doing it for some reason.
Right.
Does it relax you? But I believe firmly that whenever you teach yourself that you need to reach for something to make yourself feel better in some way.
Yeah.
There's good and bad. I'm thirsty, drink water. That's good.
Right.
But if you're reaching for marijuana, every time you get anxiety or you just want to calm down, is that good? Is there purposes that are good with marijuana? I believe under medical doctors' supervision, I think there's stuff there to be looked at. Sure, there's that. But if you're doing record, just to do it, you need to be careful because that might just be marijuana. And I don't recommend anyone really doing that. But what happens when the hard stuff comes?
Right.
Marijuana is not good enough. And if you know in the back of your head, I've been in this circle and I know he does cocaine and he's told me, woo, that is a lot powerful and you won't believe they're hearing this.
Yeah.
How much more likely are you going to try that?
Yeah.
A lot more likely.
And talk to me a little bit about just having, because I'm sure you didn't really realize this, but you have an addictive personality.
Very.
Right?
Very.
You're an addict.
Very.
But some people aren't. It's kind of a spectrum. Like some people can easily try things and experiment, and some people will immediately become addicted. And some people, they don't struggle with substances, but they're addicted to video games. They're addicted to pornography. They're addicted to, when you have an addictive personality, when you finally get rid of one addiction, it's really easy to go find another one.
It is.
Right.
It is. Yes. And you're absolutely right. It was amazing to me to witness that firsthand. I would have someone, his grandma lived in town. He would come in and he would use the drug with us for 2 hours, and then he would be gone for 3 weeks, and he would come back Have you done any more of the drug? No.
Yeah.
What do you mean no?
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
No. And so you're right. There is those types, and then there's the types like me. You do it once, and then it takes off. So, yeah. And then when you become sober with my addictive personality, you have to, and I firmly believe this, and you alluded to this, I think, earlier. What is your new high?
Mm-hmm.
What is going to become your new addiction?
Yeah.
A good addiction.
Right.
Because if you don't have that, the chances of you relapsing are so much higher. You've got to find, and every one of us has that purpose. I don't care who you are. Every one of us is good at something, and we have to find what that is.
Mm-hmm.
You have something that I don't. Tommy, we all have something that someone else doesn't have.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the world so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I encourage these kids, you have got to find that. When you're tempted with drugs, go to that high. You know, I'm talking about the type of thing where time doesn't exist. You love it so much that time does not even exist when you're doing that thing. And it could be a couple of things. But you got to find that new high. If I don't find that new high, I get worried. I need that high, and that high for me is going to these schools.
Yeah.
Absolutely high.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're getting letters from kids, and it's a high for me.
That's so awesome.
I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
I really sincerely, I thank God every day for that. Because if I didn't have those schools, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because that is my passion. Time does not exist. And it's so powerful for me that when I get depressed in the middle of the night, when I can't sleep to this day, because I still don't sleep very well, I'll get depressed. But if I go and just as much type an email to a teacher,
yeah,
because I love it that much.
Right. And it's a selfless act.
Right.
You're putting love into the universe.
Yeah.
So it's hard to feel bad when you're doing that.
Right. And I think everybody has, maybe not that exact thing, but everybody has that thing that they can offer the world. I know that. And I actually tell the kids, if you give me 5 minutes with you, I'll give you 15 minutes back of why I think you're awesome, unique, and special to this world. And I will tell you some of the things I believe that you could work towards, or that I feel that you're good at. That you have that passion. They look at me like, yeah, right. I've never been proven wrong on that. I've only done it 20, 30 times. I've never been proven wrong. That's how much I believe in these kids. And we all have it. I believe I could do that with anybody.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating if you think about it. If you think about just meeting people, it's fascinating. Like I don't know you very well. I've watched some of your stuff, and I think it's brilliant what you're doing and the way you do your podcast. It's great. And but I would love to just sit down and just see what you're all about.
Right.
You know, just ask questions. You know, it's fascinating. If you can change your whole perspective on life. And I tell these kids, if you walk into school and you change your perspective, and instead of looking at somebody as someone, oh, he doesn't dress very nice, or he might not be as popular, what if you looked at that person and thought, what can I learn from them? Because there is something.
Yeah.
And they are good at something. And that's what makes the world so cool.
Well, you can look at somebody that's like bugging you or just annoying, and you can be like, but why is this person so annoying to me?
Yeah.
You know, and why? Because they've certainly had a very different life than me. So
Right.
what makes, like, maybe I still don't want to spend time with them or be their friend or be around them, but yeah, like you said, if you can walk into a room with immediate empathy and be like, okay, maybe this kid is annoying because he needs attention.
Right.
Because his dad's gone.
Right.
And his mom is an alcoholic, or, you know, he's in a foster system.
Yeah.
And he's living his home life is hell. So yeah, maybe he's a little annoying. So what?
Yeah. Right. Right. And to be able to look past that.
Yeah.
And to be able to go and with that mentality. And the best feeling is after a presentation, or maybe before, and a student comes up to me and they're in tears, and they're both their parents are gone. They live with grandparents.
Yeah.
They're both on drugs. And for me to be able to take 5 minutes with them and do my best to build them up
Mm-hmm.
and see their whole demeanor flip
Yeah.
and have some kind of hope, that is the best feeling right there.
Yeah.
Because they crave it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, I believe, has that imaginary sign around their neck. Everybody that says, make me feel important. I don't care if you're the president of some huge company. I don't care.
Yeah.
We all want that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can do that and just say, hey, love the shoes. Tell me about it. Like just something as simple as that, take notice, is so powerful.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize how powerful just kindness and charity and doing what you just said, looking past some of the annoying things, but just really go after the things that they're truly good at and try to find those things and then tell them.
Yeah.
I see that in you. There's nothing more powerful than that.
Right. Yeah. I have a good friend. We went to high school together, and I used to always give him crap because I felt like he would just be friends with anyone. And I'm like, dude, every time we go to lunch or we go do something, you got some stray with you.
Yeah.
You know, you got some dude that, like, he's fine. He's not a jerk, but he's just not my cup of tea. He's annoying, whatever.
Right.
But I remember one time he told me, he's like, dude, I can't help somebody I don't know. So I need to know more people.
Yeah.
And so his framework was, I don't care about how annoying this person is. This person needs friendship. So
Yeah.
it doesn't bother me that much. I'll be the friend,
Yeah.
you know? And I've that's really stayed with me. And, you know,
That's
you still have moments where you're like, man, I just struggle to be around
Sure.
person
Sure.
A or B, but to go in with the lens of, man, who needs what I have to offer? Who needs my friendship?
Right.
Instead of like, who can make my life blissful?
Exactly.
You know,
right.
who can bring me peace and joy and comedy, and who can just make my life wonderful all the time? It's like, no, let me see who needs the talents that I have and the abilities that I have.
Exactly. Perfectly said. And a lot of people are afraid to say, hey, I'm good at this or I'm good at that.
Yeah.
And I want to change that narrative because there's nothing wrong with knowing what you're good at. You don't want to be arrogant.
Right.
But tell yourself in the mirror, you know, I'm good at this and that and this. And in the right situation, tell others.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
As long as we understand that everybody is good at stuff.
Yeah.
And I want everybody to tell me. I want these kids, tell me what you're good at. Tell me 2 things that you're good at right now before you leave. You're not going to your next class until you tell me
Right.
2 things that you're good at.
Yeah.
You know, that type of thing. And you can see the faces change immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like you were saying, it just, you know, what can people take from you?
Right.
What do you have to offer that maybe, how many people have I passed by in my lifetime that could have used a compliment? Just a compliment is huge.
Yeah.
I look at the world today, and I've thought about this a lot, and I don't know if I'm talking too long here, but we could flip this world completely over if everyone would say one good thing about somebody else today. We would completely change the whole world by tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's how powerful it is.
Well, it's like, have you seen the movie Pay It Forward?
Yes.
Yeah. It's kind of that concept. It's this butterfly effect where, you know, somebody does something good for you. You're kind of like, oh man, I kind of want to do the same thing.
Right.
And that just becomes your lifestyle. It becomes
exactly
your muscle memory is when you see somebody that has a shirt you like, you compliment it.
Right.
When you see someone that says something funny, you tell them, hey, you're funny.
Yeah.
You know, you don't suppress like a kind feeling that you have.
Exactly.
Because you're embarrassed or whatever.
Absolutely. And there's so much power in that.
Yeah.
And I try to bring that into my presentations as well. You know, if you want to change your school, we put each other in categories. And it happens. It just like naturally happens. I don't know how it happens, but you go to school, you got the people that play Pokemon in the hall, you got the skaters, you got maybe the more popular and the less popular. But if they would go in to the school and just look at everybody as an equal, how powerful would that be?
Yeah.
And I always like to remind them, and I'll maybe close with this, and you can ask me more questions because I know I'm talking a lot. But I always tell the kids, I want you to remember, you're a senior in high school right now, and I want you to understand that in 10 years from now, you're going to have what's called a 10-year school reunion, okay? And I want you to remember this, that those that may be popular, and there, by the way, there's nothing wrong with being popular if you're the right kind of popular, that pull up to school in a Tesla. On that 10-year reunion, they may pull up in a Honda Civic because life changes. We go through different things, but there's just as good today as they will be in 10 years from now. And the one that's pulling up to your high school today, and maybe the garbage car, maybe we look down on them, they don't have the best clothes. On that 10-year reunion, they may have the best.
Yeah.
We always treat each other as equals.
Right.
And the best way to learn that, and where you will learn that the best, is at that 10-year reunion where you go, oh, I watched just as good.
Yeah.
I'm a CEO and he's not.
Right.
But they told me I wouldn't be, or acted like I wouldn't be.
Yeah.
And the important thing, the lesson there is that you just never know. But we're all just as important. We're all just as qualified.
Yeah.
And we're all here for a reason.
Yeah, totally. Okay, couple questions and we'll wrap this up. I love that you always ask kids, tell me something good that you do. I wanted to ask, what do you love the most about yourself? After all these years of, there's a lot of things I'm sure you still carry some guilt and shame, and there's ugly parts of you that are probably a little haunting at times. But what do you love the most about who you've become?
You ask great questions. You ask great questions, and that is a great question. I love that for some reason since I was little, I've loved people. I've been fascinated with people.
Yeah.
And I've loved just kind of what we're talking about. I've loved the fact that I've always loved taking care of the underdog. I don't know why. Because I was the underdog a lot of the times, and maybe that's why.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that I love making somebody feel better than when I met them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that I have that for some reason.
Yeah.
Because that's a natural high.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about. I love that I have that, and I hope it never leaves.
Yeah, you love your heart.
Yeah, I love my heart. and I lost it for a decade.
Yeah.
And so it means even more to me today that I still have that, and I do love people, all people.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So
I wanted to read this quote to you that I love and wanted to get your thoughts on it. It's by Salvador Dali, the artist, and he's kind of just talking about the crucible of life and what it means to be present and to know that, life is short and death is around the corner. And obviously you've had a close relationship with death, I'm sure, in a lot of ways. He said, I enjoy tremendously every single moment of my life because death all the time is very close watching me, and death might catch me. And every 5 minutes death doesn't catch me, I enjoy tremendously.
That's powerful. I've thought about this a lot. It's interesting that you brought that quote up, because time, when you lose a decade, that's in the back of my head.
Yeah.
Time. Know how precious time is? How many more memories? So to answer your question, I feel the same. I try to be, it's hard to kind of get in that mind frame and to make it part of my daily thinking, but I want to do better at enjoying every single moment, because the older I get and the more you see the world,
Mm-hmm.
you just don't know. And I don't want to look back ever again and say I wasted time,
Yeah.
you know, because it's precious and we can't get it back. And who knows how long we do have. And to, with my kids, cherish them, my wife, you know, spend a time doing podcasts or with good people like Tommy and other friends, and
Yeah.
just use your time wisely. Have have fun, enjoy life, um, and accomplish things, and use your time to help others.
Yeah.
And if I can go out of this world for the last, doing that for the last 20 years or 30 years or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, I will be very satisfied.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you know what? Like, obviously, there will be a much bigger ripple effect than this, but there might be one assembly that you've done that
Yeah.
is literally your reason for coming here on this earth.
Yeah, that's hard. Yeah, I've never thought of it that way.
You know? And I mean, like I said, there's so much more that you can do and give than
Yeah.
one afternoon, but you just don't know,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And that's the cool thing about what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Because you will have kids message you after
Yeah.
on social media and say, "Hey, thank you," and that's worth $1 million
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. I love to, flip things around and say, okay, I know you don't know me super well, but do you have a question for me? Any questions for me?
I think the first one that comes to mind is I've seen your podcast. I guess maybe why did you first start doing podcasts?
Mm-hmm.
What was the reason? Was it that you just wanted to get things out? You just wanted to find more out about people? What was it that drove
Yeah.
you to do
I
podcasts?
think my answer has evolved a little bit over time because I think when I first started, it just sounded fun. I wanted to talk about ideas and talk about my feelings and talk about things I've been through. And I had made some videos on YouTube. I had kind of messed around with it. And to me, it was just a cool new outlet. And, but then as I started interviewing people, I'm like you, I love people and I've always been curious about people and wanted to know what makes people tick and why
Yeah.
people are the way they are. And as I started interviewing people, it became this really cool way for me to dive deep with people. It's a weird excuse
Yeah.
to be vulnerable with often a stranger,
Right.
you know,
Right.
like, but then also I'll have close friends on, and
Sure.
it's a good reason to catch up. It's a good reason to explore things we haven't explored before. And so to me, it became this really amazing form of catharsis. It became therapy.
Therapy.
It became like a reason to reconnect with people and to connect with people for the first time. And so it's it gives me so much. Like, if it gives anyone else anything, amazing. That's the cherry on top. And like you said, it is unbelievably fulfilling when someone messages you and says, "Oh, something I said resonated with them
Yeah.
or helped them."
Right.
Somebody messaged me the other day and just said, "Hey, I've been listening to your podcasts as I've been going through chemotherapy, and it's been really just helpful and it's been relaxing for me." And I'm like, "Well, okay, my work here is done. I don't care if I make another penny. I don't care if the podcast explodes tomorrow or if podcasts are outlawed tomorrow and I can never do it again."
Yeah. Well, I've seen a lot of podcasts, and I was listening to something that you're saying, and I can't remember when or what it was even about. I think it was like a poem or something you were describing. You love the cloud, like you were. I just remember feeling that I felt like very in tune. I felt like you were very sincere and a deep thinker. And was my first impression after looking at a few of your clips. And I think they were earlier clips than their podcast. And I thought that's very interesting, and that's what people want. So it doesn't surprise me that this will be your podcast will be at the top of the charts, because really that's what people want. They just want real.
Yeah.
Tell me what you really think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I love. And so that's why I asked you what got you.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Into it. So,
well, James, I think it's beautiful what you're doing. I love just your general message. I love that you're giving back. I love the way you talk about this next generation of kids and how amazing they are and how much potential they have, instead of, denigrating them for always being on their phones or having a short attention span, right? You focus on the beautiful. So tell me where is the best place for people to get in touch with you if they want you to come speak to them, if they want, I don't know how much you encourage just strangers messaging you and that need help or want to talk about what they're going through.
Yeah, I get that, and that's fine. I might not get to you within a few weeks, but the best place would probably just be my website, which is just jamesdallin.com. And then I have an Instagram that is called Addiction Talk. And I'm going to start doing better there. Posting. I haven't been posting too much, but I'm going to start back into that. I've got the school year starting up, and so that'll make it. So Addiction Talk, on Instagram. And then my website would be the best too.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we'll put all that in the show notes. And so, reach out, if you know someone that, would like to have a speaker come and talk about substance abuse prevention and addiction and recovery and all these wonderful things, hit up James.
Would love it.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, really, really appreciate you coming on. And I just loved meeting you. You're an awesome guy.
Likewise. It was awesome. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks, man.
All right, bro.
Okay.
Okay.